Third reading of the European Union Notification of Withdrawal Bill. Lord Bridges of Headley.
My Lords, I have it in my command from Her Majesty the Queen to acquaint the House that Her Majesty, having been informed of the purpose of the purport of the European Union Notification of Withdrawal Bill, has consented to place her prerogative, so far as it is affected by the bill, at the disposal of Parliament for the purposes of the bill.
My Lords, I beg to move that the bill be read a third time.
It will be now read a third time. As many as are of that opinion will say content. The contrary not content. The contents have it.
My Lords, I beg to move that the bill do now pass. My Lords, sometimes statistics say more than words. So here is a very simple fact. We have spent some 44 or so hours debating a bill that started off as 137 words. And that works out at about 20 minutes per word. But, my Lords, that amount of time and scrutiny is hardly surprising, given the importance of the issues that swirl around those words. And in the debates, we have seen the very best of what this House is here to do. As I said at second reading a fortnight ago, although I have to say it feels a lot longer than that, scrutinising legislation is not an unpatriotic act. Whatever our differences, we all share a basic wish to see our country prosper in the future. And everything that has been said has been motivated by that basic wish. And the House, I'm sure, will be grateful that I'm not going to name each person who has spoken, as that in itself might take some time. But I would like to thank each and every one of your lordships who has spoken, even where we have disagreed. And I would like to apologise too if I deprived anyone of the chance to speak, although I have a sneaking suspicion that we'll meet again very soon and on numerous occasions after that. For we are, as I've said before, just about approaching base camp in terms of the parliamentary process around our withdrawal from the European Union. So while I would like indeed to thank my excellent bill team and my noble friends Baroness Goldie, Lord Dunlop and Lord Keane for all their help on getting me this far, I would only add, please keep going. And of course I'm obliged to the noble Baroness Hayter and the noble Baroness Ludford for their diligence in sitting in on the front bench through the long hours of these debates. Now, my Lords, I have to admit that the noble Baroness Hayter did somewhat set back my efforts to build a national consensus on our withdrawal from the EU when she mentioned my youngest daughter in her second reading speech, but failed to mention my twins. As you can imagine, this caused some consternation at the Bridges breakfast table the next morning. My twins expressed loud demands for a meaningful mention. They wanted reciprocity now, not some unknown point in the future. They were not prepared to take it or leave it. Bridges means bridges, I was told. And so I'm very grateful that she has since addressed this imbalance. My Lords, this bill simply seeks to honour the commitment the government gave to respect the outcome of the referendum held on the 23rd of June last year. During the course of our debates on this issue, a number of noble lords have questioned the formulation of the bill or sought to expand it beyond its straightforward aim. Now, my Lords, while I have disagreed with them on a number of occasions, the one point on which I thought we all had agreed upon is that we must respect the outcome of the referendum and that neither the Labour Party nor the Liberal Democrats would block this bill. So let me just end by saying that I know the noble Lord Newby is indeed a very honourable man, so I look forward with great interest to hearing why he has tabled the amendment to the motion, which appears to be contradicting everything he has said, and that his party will now block the UK's exit from the European Union. My Lords, I beg to move.
The question is that this bill do now pass. Amendment, Lord Newby.
My Lords, can I thank the Minister and all those who've spoken in debates on this bill to date. It's been a great privilege to take part in such debates, which have been conducted with great erudition and great passion in equal measure. My Lords, the companion enjoys those who move amendments at this stage to speak but briefly to them, so I shall be brief. My Lords, amendments to the motion that the bill do now pass are rare, and on these benches we haven't initiated such an amendment in recent times. We only do so because of the importance of the issue before us and the strength of our opposition to the way in which the government has approached this bill and the Brexit process. We on these benches have argued, as we did in the Commons, that whilst it's perfectly proper for the government to be triggering the Article 50 negotiations, it should only do so if the process to be followed throughout respected principles of both parliamentary sovereignty and democratic accountability. In reality, the government has shown disdain for both. Parliament must clearly play a full part in the entire process, but we also believe it's essential that the people take the final decision for reasons which we fully debated in recent days. The government's view is not only that it opposes giving the people the final say, but that it opposes, in principle, any amendments, whatever, to the bill. And the noble Lord's enthusiasm for scrutiny is rather tempered by the idea that such scrutiny might actually lead to amendment. My Lords, why is this the case? It's not in reality that it's somehow inappropriate, far less improper, to amend this bill. It's simply that it's inconvenient for the government to do so. Its whole attitude is one of lofty disdain for Parliament and the people alike. My Lords, in moving this amendment and voting on it, I do so in the certain knowledge that this bill will now pass this evening back to the Commons. But we on these benches could not allow this to happen without registering our opposition to the brutal Brexit which the government is now pursuing. Whether in making the country poorer by leaving the single market, or by using over 3 million EU nationals living in the UK as bargaining chips. These decisions will exacerbate our long-term economic problems of fiscal imbalances, balance of payments deficits and low productivity, as well as our reputation as a welcoming and tolerant country. But, my Lords, the government now seems set on a course towards this brutal Brexit. This is a deliberate distortion of the mandate they received from the British people, and we on these benches cannot, in all conscience, support it. At this historic moment, we wish to record again our opposition to the damaging course on which the government is set, and our opposition to the government's refusal to allow the British people, who will feel the consequences of Brexit for generations to come, the right to decide their own future. My Lords, I beg to move.
Yeah. The original question was that this bill do now pass, since when an amendment has been moved to leave out from that to the end and insert "this House declines to allow the bill to pass because the bill does not provide a mechanism for the people of the United Kingdom to have a vote prior to the United Kingdom's departure from the European Union on the terms of the new relationship between the United Kingdom and the European Union. The question I therefore have to put is that this amendment be agreed to.
My Lords, this bill is a direct result of two things: the outcome of the referendum and the decision of the Supreme Court. In all of this, countless behind-the-scenes hands have been at work. Wherever we stood as we voted on 23rd of June, all of us know the task since then has been unprecedented, with civil servants having to devise new structures and work teams to prepare Parliament for this. Just our first bill, there will be others which will come our way. So, my Lords, I think it is appropriate that we take a moment to acknowledge, as the noble Lord the Minister did, and to acknowledge their work and thank all those who have contributed within the Department for Brexit in the EU and within your Lordship's House. As an opposition, we have been well supported by Dan Stevens, Ben Kaufman, Ian Parker and their colleagues. And whilst I recognise that the work on the bill is not yet done, if I thank them now, it might give them the energy for all the work that's yet to be done.
And my Lords, thanks are also due to the noble Lord the Minister, for whom we have considerable sympathy. And can I indeed say apologise to his family? We've probably taken up far too much of his time, and we'd be very happy for him to spend more time with his family in the months to come. But also thank him and his colleagues and the noble Lord, the Chief Whip, for their help and deal with the mechanics of the timetable of this bill. And I concur on his comments and thank all noble lords who have spoken. My Lords, I think the debates we have had, both at second reading, committee and report, have done great credit to your Lordship's House, both in terms of the range of expertise we've been able to show and the quality of those debates. And I also, my Lords, want to thank my colleagues, my noble friend Lord Lenny, but also a special word, my Lords, for the noble lady Baroness Hayter. She has worked tirelessly on this bill, and I have to say she's a lot more even-tempered than perhaps I am. It's a pleasure to work for her, and I look forward to seeing her continued work on this bill. She recalled how she was volunteered to wind up at the second reading, and she will be volunteered again in the future. But my Lord, sincere thanks to all them and all my colleagues. On different sides of the arguments, I think we've conducted ourselves with great integrity and strong belief. And that's my Lords, that I'm rather puzzled in many ways by the noble Lord Newby's comments today. And I say to him, as somebody alongside many of my colleagues who campaigned extraordinarily hard to remain in the EU, and we do regret the decision that has been taken. I think the case has to be that not just the 52% have to be represented, but the 48% as well. And it has to be recognised by all in your Lordship's House that we have a duty to perhaps try and heal and unite where there has been division, and also for the government to recognise they have to act in the interests of the whole country. But during this debate, we have voted as a House on two extraordinarily important amendments. One on the position of EEA and EU nationals, to remove some of the uncertainty that these people currently have regarding their position in the UK and our UK citizens have about their position in the EU. So that was one very serious amendment. The second one was the one we debated tonight on the issue of parliamentary sovereignty. And again, my Lords, in that case, a majority of 98. Both those amendments fulfil the criteria of the role of your Lordship's House in asking the other place, the House of Commons, to reconsider, and the quality and the content of those debates provides considerable material for MPs to do so. And the reason we passed those amendments, my Lord, wasn't some kind of vanity exercise or just to make a point. We're not a debating society where we have our debates and then afterwards we shrug off home, off to the pub because we've made our point and have no thought about what happens next. This is really important. My Lords, what happens in this House is really important. So we passed those amendments as a House as a very serious reason, as part of our constitutional responsibilities. And, my Lords, I want to hear the House of Commons debate those issues. I want elected MPs to reconsider, and I hope they will accept our amendments and the principles behind them. And I'd be very happy to see the government, we've offered cooperation and help on this one, be very happy to see the government bring forward similar amendments to have effect and give effect to those. Because, my Lords, these amendments matter. And that's why I find the Liberal Democrat motion tonight absolutely incredible. The noble Lord Newby stood in your Lordship's House today and told us that he accepted the result of the referendum and the vote in the other place. But he failed to convince this House the second referendum was the right course of action at this time. And on the basis of that, as outlined in his motion, not about anything else, not about all the issues he talked about, hard Brexit, just on that one issue of that vote, Liberal Democrats are now prepared to vote against this whole bill to stop members of Parliament considering our amendments. My Lords, I find that irresponsible. And it may be that he feels OK, as he said, he can make a point about Brexit as a whole, because we're not going to win the vote. Well, my Lords, responsibility isn't just about winning. It is about taking responsibility for our actions. And as I heard him tonight, he failed to convince me that he is serious about these amendments that we have voted on. My Lord, if this amendment, this motion from the Liberal Democrats was passed tonight, it would stop the other place considering the amendments on EEA nationals, EU nationals and on parliamentary sovereignty. Your Lordship's House was never told when voting on these amendments that at the final hurdle, the Liberal Democrats would say they will not support the very amendments that they've asked your Lordship's House to vote for. So, my Lords, to me, I am very much committed to these two amendments, it shows a lack of commitment to these two amendments, these two issues, which to this House have been voted. And I take no nonsense vote. I can hear some chanting from the party opposite. Let me say to you, if we really care about these amendments, I'm not taking heckling, stand up and intervene if you want to, but don't heckle. If we really care about these amendments, we want them to go to the other place and we want the other place to debate them. So, my Lord, how can we possibly ask MPs to vote for these amendments if this House is not prepared to pass those amendments and let the bill pass them to go to the other place? So, my Lords, we believe in those amendments we supported. We respect the decisions taken by this House, and we respect and we thank our colleagues from all parties who supported them. So I have no hesitation, my Lords, in asking your Lordship's House to reject this motion.
Sits down. I very much support what she's just said about the value of the amendments that this House has carried. But does she not agree that her plea to the members opposite to heal and unite rings pretty false when they are pursuing the hardest of hard Brexits? And does she not also agree that whereas in June it would have been reasonable to hope that you might have had a national consensus around a soft Brexit, this government has done nothing of this kind, that it has actually the policy of the Lancaster House speech, is la-la land as far as the possibility of a reasonable negotiation in the national interest. And I think these things are very, very important, and I hope that the opposition will continue to fight with vigour this hardest of hard Brexits.
My Lords, I don't think I've ever been accused of not having vigour. And can I say to him, yes, I agree. The response from the party opposite, not from all colleagues, I have to say, but those who particularly want to pursue the hard Brexit, is disappointing. But not for one moment will I or my colleagues on this side of the House give up trying to get the best deals we possibly can for the people of this country. So yes, I am disappointed, and I'm very disappointed that before we'd even finished voting, there were some ministers that rushed out to tell the cameras, we're going to hold back, we're not going to support this. My Lords, we need a responsible, grown-up response, a mature response, and just saying head-on a hard Brexit doesn't do it. But there is a role for this House. And the role for this House is when we pass amendments, we don't just put them in the bag and give up. We send them to the other end. And, my Lords, as I've said, I have no hesitation in saying reject this motion, because our responsibility, as my noble friend agrees with me, our responsibility is to ensure that the work we've put into those amendments, the debates we've had on those amendments, the issues we've raised on those amendments should be considered by the other place.
My Lords, as I've said, I very much hope, and to echo the noble Baroness's remarks, I very much hope that we, both as a House and as a nation, can indeed put the divisions of the referendum behind us, that we can accept the result and turn our minds to how we can, together, overcome the challenges we face as a nation. As I said at second reading, I voted Remain, my Lords, so I certainly don't dismiss concerns lightly or complacently, but I do genuinely believe that we, as a House, must respect the will of the British people and deliver on their wish to leave the European Union. And so, my Lords, with that in mind, I am more than just a little disappointed by the approach of the Liberal Democrats. It is one thing to vote for an amendment to this bill. It is quite another to try and block it entirely. What, my Lords, of the majority of MPs who voted to give the country a referendum? What of the 17.4 million people who voted to leave the European Union? What of the majority of MPs who voted to pass this bill without amendment? I just find it, personally, pretty strange that a party that has Democrat in its name then votes against delivering the will of the people. For however the Liberal Democrats dress this amendment up, it would stop this bill from passing, which means we cannot start the process of negotiating. And I find the logic, my Lords, very difficult to grasp. The noble Lord seems to be saying, because we're not going to have a second referendum, we should not respect the views of the people expressed in the first. Now, my Lords, the noble Lord made commitments to this House and to the nation on February the 20th. He said, no significant body of opinion in this House is seeking to prevent the passage of the bill, but there is a world of difference between blocking the bill and seeking to amend it. And he went on, no one is suggesting we want to stop the bill. We are not saying we want to block the bill. So, my Lords, and furthermore, just this morning, the leader of the Liberal Democrats said on the BBC, and I quote, "But in the end, the majority of people voted to leave the European Union. It would be quite wrong for the Lords of the Commons or the courts to try and frustrate the will of the people. I'm against that." My Lords, I therefore find this baffling. And I could go on and recite all the steps that Parliament and the Government will take to ensure that Parliament does not merely scrutinise the process of our leaving the European Union, but takes major decisions. I have done so several times. But to do so, my Lords, misses a much bigger point on this amendment. There are two very simple issues here. First, the integrity of a party whose leader in this House says it will not block this bill but then tries to do so. Second, the belief in democracy that the party claims to champion. Sadly, it appears to me that if the noble Lord presses this amendment, it will show that the Liberal Democrats are willing to do anything to give the kiss of life to their political fortunes. I very, very much hope this is not the case and this bill will go to the other place without further delay.
My Lords, the idea that by speaking and voting, as we will now do, will block this bill is, of course, fantasy. It has been abundantly clear that the opposition in your Lordship's House will vote for this bill, as will the government. And I will simply repeat what I said in my...
It can't possibly be an honourable thing to do. It's the only thing I can say to this, to say that he's going to vote against the implementation of this bill, to kill this bill, which has been overwhelmingly passed by the Commons and, of course, is the result of a referendum. But he's voting in the full secure knowledge that the bill will in fact pass. Yes. If he's voting on his amendment, I hope he can assure the House that it's with the full intention of trying to kill the bill, because anything other could only be interpreted as complete cynicism.
My Lords, I've got to live with my conscience on this bill as everybody else has, and I'm going to sleep easy tonight. I can tell your Lordships that. My Lords, I just repeat what I said earlier. We are voting now to record our opposition to the damaging course on which the government set and its refusal to allow the British people...
Order. I apologise to the noble Lord, but he is again coming back that the reason he's voting against or for his motion tonight is because of his fears, as many are shared across the House, of a hard Brexit. That is not what his motion says. His motion says that today that they want the bill not to pass because they didn't get their way on a second referendum vote.
My Lords, the noble Baroness unfortunately didn't allow me to finish my sentence, which was our opposition to to the government's refusal to allow the British people, who will feel the consequences, i.e. costs, of Brexit, for generations to come, the right to decide their own future. My Lords, I wish to test the opinion of the House.
The original question was that this bill do now pass, since when an amendment has been moved to leave out all the words from that to the end and insert "this House declines to allow the bill to pass because the bill does not provide a mechanism for the people of the United Kingdom to have a vote prior to the United Kingdom's departure from the European Union on the terms of the new relationship between the United Kingdom and the European Union. The question is that this amendment be agreed to. As many as are of that opinion will say content. Content. The contrary not content. Not content. Clear the bar. The question is that this amendment be agreed to. As many as are of that opinion will say content. The contrary not content. Not content. The contents will go to the right by the throne and the not contents to the left by the bar. Question is that this amendment be agreed to. My Lords, there have voted contents 95, not contents 340. The not contents have it. The question is that this bill do now pass. As many as are of that opinion will say content. Content. The contrary not content. The contents have it.
My Lords, I beg to move that the House do now adjourn.
That the House do now adjourn.